with stations all over the U.S., North America, Puerto Rico, and Guam. Also by satellite, we are Coast to Coast AM. I'm Connie Willis, your host. I would love for you to join my website, whether it's the newsletter or any of my different shows that I have. One of them is called Connie After Dark, where you can have a drink with me. It doesn't matter what you drink. It's okay. Gatorade, water, whatever the deal is. You just stay at home and we virtually talk for a few hours and we have a good time. If that sounds interesting to you, go check it out. Connie After Dark. And that is at ConnieWillis.com. Our next guest is a friend of mine. Mystic Dave is his name. You might know him as David Barnett, but probably not. You probably know him as Mystic Dave or Dave the Mystic. Depends on where he has to write it and how many letters they will allow him to use. He's an energy medicine practitioner, healer, intuitive of over 40 years of experience. He's in Colorado. Yay. He has multiple technical degrees. Yes, he's a scientist, you guys. He's truly a rocket scientist at that. And he does these things that cross the lines of no other scientist will cross for the most part. I'm going to let him tell you more about who he is. That's way better than me reading the little bio. I'm just saying. So welcome once again. He's been on here several times now. Dave the Mystic. Everybody put your hands together for Dave. Hey, Dave, welcome back.
Hey, thank you so much, Connie. It's great to be back and talking with you again.
It's always fun with you. You've got this sense of humor, so we can laugh about things. You get serious as well, and you also get technical along the way too, in a good way, not over the head. You always speak in layman's terms, but you always find things extremely interesting. I know in the past, I remember you had found a new entity at one point, and we were talking about that. And before just introducing you as Dave the Mystic and the things that you do, which I think is incredible. You do some really interesting things, and we've known each other for several years now. And I'm amazed. I'm amazed at Dave the Mystic. But now you've got something new to tell us about. But first of all, tell us more about your background so people will have an idea.
Sure. Well, back many, many years ago, I'm in retiree age. As a kid, in elementary school, I discovered electronics. And back then, it was vacuum tubes. So I date myself. But I just had to learn how electronics worked. And starting in fifth grade, I started taking apart TVs. I started building radio kits. I became a shortwave listener after building a radio kit. And then later on, I built a kit for a ham radio and became a ham radio operator when I was still in junior high. And just kept progressing with this. Something that coincidentally happened at that point was my dad, who was an engineer and then became an Episcopal priest, my parents divorced when I was 11, and my mother got interested around that time in astrology. She just had to find out how it worked after she had a very profound reading. So I kind of became her guinea pig. My three older brothers wouldn't have anything to do with it. They all made fun of her and called her Madame Zelda. But it kept me open to the idea that there was something out there that was bigger than my standard physics and standard science. And that comes into play later on. So fast forward to the point after I've got my bachelor's degree and master's degree in electrical engineering. I've worked at General Motors. I've worked at Boeing back in Wichita, where I grew up, and then I moved to Denver in 1981 and was working for Martin Marietta. So in 1983, I go to my 10th high school reunion. I run into one of my old friends, Barry. I can use his name now. Sad to say, he passed in 2019, and so I don't have to keep him anonymous anymore. A true friend. And Barry started asking me, he said, Dave, did you become an electrical engineer like you expected? And I said, well, sure, yeah. And he said, do you think it's possible to change things at a distance? And I said, well, what do you mean? And he kept asking that question in different vague ways. He wouldn't come out with it. And I just started to get a little bit frustrated. I said, well, come on, tell me what's going on. He said, well, I'd rather show you. Let's go over to my house after this picnic. And so I rode with him to his house, and when we got there and got out of the car, the first thing he did is he walked me up to the electric meter on his house, and the wheel in there was spinning, and he said, do you see the rate of the wheel? And, well, of course, it's pretty obvious. And the speed of that wheel, for the listeners, is directly proportional to how much power you're using at that moment in your house. If you turn on the oven, it's going to spin faster. You turn off the oven and the air conditioning, and it spins slower. So I could see how fast it was going, and Barry kind of points at it vaguely with his index finger and says, now. And the wheel rate slowed by a third. And then he pops up and says, I did this to my mother's house about several months ago, and he said her bills are still lower. So it was quite intriguing. And, I started to feel like the hair was coming up on the back of my neck a little bit. He takes me inside, and he shows me a little black and white TV, one of the cheapies that you get at the drugstore on rabbit ears, and he puts it on a station that didn't have a channel, and in Wichita, surprisingly or not surprisingly, that's pretty easy to do. They only had 3 broadcast channels plus public TV. And so he puts on a snow channel, and he points his finger to TV and says, now. And suddenly there's a station on the screen. I mean, he's tuned it in through just the power of his mind. Another big demonstration, among others, he showed me at his house was we sat in his car, and it was conventional ignition. It's running, and he has his hands and feet off all the controls, and he sort of points towards the engine compartment and says, now, and the car idle slows down to the point where it's stalling, and he offers that he can stall other cars in traffic. He's done that. And from seeing that, I believe him. And then the next step, at that point in time in his life, he was a disc jockey at an FM radio station, and it was a 50,000-watt output station in Wichita. We go down to a station, and he takes me in one of the back rooms where they have all the meters that the disc jockeys or the technicians have to look at periodically to make sure that the transmitter is performing normally. And there's one meter that reads digitally, and it's rock solid. It's reading 99.6, and that means that 99.6% of 50,000 watts is going out the antenna at that moment. So it's a health check. And he asked me if I see the meter. I said, yeah. And he said, do you see how stable it is? I said, yeah. He goes, okay. And he points at the meter and says, now, and it drops to 99.2. Well, 0.4% of 50,000 watts is a phenomenal amount of power to control on demand with your mind. And I've read many, many books. My library's up to about 1,000 books now, and I've found very few people have the capability to change physics around them, where it always happens. It happens in a very gross, big, measurable way. And it always, or in his case, it always happens in the direction he expected. You know, if he wanted it to go up, it went up. If he wanted it to go down, it went down. Over the years, we even tried other things where, for example, and this is just kind of fun, we're looking for something to do, and I had a ceiling fan in my kitchen that was off balance, so it gets one of those little, bump, 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 as it spins.
Yes.
And I had told him about it. He said, well, tap on the phone so I have an idea of the cadence of it, and let me see if I can adjust it. And so I'm tapping on the phone, and pretty soon the ceiling fan balances out, and it doesn't make any more the oscillating noises.
He was somewhere else. You were doing this by phone. He was somewhere else.
Yeah, I was in Denver, and he was in Wichita.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And so, like most psychic phenomena, most things like this, distance doesn't make a difference.
Right.
It's not like an electromagnetic wave. It's something else. And so coming back from Wichita from that reunion, after having seen this, I was doing lots of intensive analysis at Martin Marietta on spacecraft electronics, and so I was really getting deep into it. But I was already feeling a little bit of an unease that yes, my electrical engineering formulas worked out just great for everything that we'd want them to, but it didn't tell me what really was going on as the nature of the universe. Everything was a math model, and coming back from this trip, it really made me want to dig in, and I dug into energy healing. I got into a therapeutic touch program, and I had a wonderful lady. She was an RN and in her 50s, and she had a Native American background and a grandmother who taught her Native American healing besides the regular healing. And so she gave us a lot of material that wasn't necessarily in the standard therapeutic touch program. And a lot of it had evidential stuff or demonstrations that really made a big impact on me. For example, one time she had a guest come in as a woman, middle-aged and a little bit overweight, and she said something is wrong with her. I want you guys to diagnose her remotely, energetically. And as soon as I saw the woman, I knew it was abdominal, and then when it was my turn to scan her with my hands, I immediately focused in on her transverse colon. It wasn't just her colon or just her intestines, it was her transverse colon, very specific. And it turned out this woman had a diagnosed colon issue, and I hit the right area. That was pre-Crohn's, but it's probably a Crohn's or an IBS issue. And things like that really made a big impression on me that I wasn't just making it up. I wasn't just imagining it. Other people weren't just imagining it. I also got involved with a group that was doing channeling of ascended masters, and I took some of their channeling training weekends. And I also started taking psychic development classes. Now, this is all in the evening or after hours. I didn't tell anybody at my aerospace job that I was doing this. This is early 80s, and it wouldn't have gone over very well. I would have lost credibility if I'd brought it up then. So I kind of had to do it on the side. And I kind of maintained that until, about 7 or 8 years ago, where I could finally start opening up. And then in 2019, I totally separated from aerospace. And even though I've been having a practice, for a number of years, working with clients, I could finally just come out, and it didn't matter who I said what to. I was in a position where I couldn't be retaliated against or punished.
And now you talk about ETs. I love it.
Yeah. Well, you have the experiences, and it's like, oh man, I want to tell somebody, and you have to be careful. And some of my psychic friends used to call me Clark Kent and Superman, because I'd be Clark Kent out at the aerospace factory, and I'd be Superman after hours.
And now you're on Coast to Coast talking about it, with saying your whole name and everything. You have come a long way. I can take the mask off. I don't have to disguise myself or hide my voice. Yes, the first time you ever came on, we had to make sure we mixed your voice differently. No, actually, when I met you, you were already out, so that's good. Out of that terrible closet.
It was a wonderful coincidence the first time I was on, because I'd hit the point where it was time to separate from the latest aerospace company I was working for. I've been with them about 15 years out of Houston, and again, I'd kept my life very secret from them. They were in the thick of the Bible Belt, and it wouldn't have gone over well. I'll just say that. So,
well, you didn't take little steps. You took a big leap on Coast.
Yeah.
I like that. I'm glad that you did, though. So anyway, I'm sorry to have cut you off on there. If you had more to say on how you got, well, that's how it all led to, it was great to hear you tell me when I called you up to say, about coming on, and what would you like to talk about? What's new? What do you got different? Oh, I want to talk about ETs and plain sight. It was like, boom, this is what I've been working on. I guess several, like 6-7 months or something like that. I'm not sure. I remember you saying something about all that you've learned, and was it because of, and why was it that you got into the ET part of it? Like what you want to talk about tonight?
Well, I've been journeying in my meditations, and I've had profound experiences. I know your previous guest kind of alluded to that people had very significant experiences with near-death experiences or traveling to past lives, and I've had all those and those visions. I've had a near-death experience, and I've been shown a lot of things, and one of the ones that really came out, and this happened maybe about 15 years ago, and this sort of opened me up to it, and I have a couple stories here. The first one was I'd already.
Time is over. Sorry, you can't tell anymore. I'm just kidding. We do have to take a break, so let's hold them off. Okay.
Okay.
Because I know you're going to get into them, and they're good, and I don't want to miss a thing. So we'll talk about how are the ways that people can find you before we take the break.
Yeah, www.davethemystic.com. That's the best way, and I do describe other services I provide, and people are free to contact me through a little web mailer on there.
Okay, and you also have Blog Talk Radio.
Yes, and I have a show. It's blogtalkradio.com/DaveTheMystic, and I do that on a weekly basis. So I try to give people new opportunities to hear things that they wouldn't maybe have access to locally.
So there you go. Keep in mind, Dave the Mystic. Sometimes it's Mystic Dave, depending on where he's at and how many letters they'll take. But otherwise, it's DaveTheMystic.com. Stay with us. Connie Willis here on Coast to Coast AM. It's Coast to Coast AM. Connie Willis with you. I just had a funny thought a second ago, and that's why you're catching me laughing here, a little bit lost. Just in my little laughter. That reminds me of the movie Arthur. Do you remember the original movie of Arthur with Dudley Moore? And he was in what was that vehicle? It wasn't a Bentley. Was it a Rolls, a Bentley, something like that? Or maybe something else? And he's in the back seat, and he just starts laughing and says sometimes he says funny things or thinks funny things. That was it. Sometimes I think funny things. Anyway, that's what I just did. Anyway, we're back at it. Dave the Mystic with us tonight here on Coast to Coast AM. And you can find him at davethemystic.com. Also, blogtalkradio.com/DaveTheMystic. And sometimes Mystic Dave, depending on how many letters he uses. I don't know why I keep saying that, Dave, but it's true because I think I remember going, do you want Dave the Mystic or Mystic Dave? What do you want to be called? And you had an answer.
Mystic Dave because of some of their rules, and but other than that, it's Dave the Mystic. But Dave is just fine.
As long as we get that part right. So you were telling us a story. You had 3 stories to tell us, and I think it was something with healing the June bug ETs. What?
Yes. Yeah. So. In the time period of 2002 to 2006, that was a time of intense meditation for me and getting a lot of coaching from spiritual beings who were helping me move forward. And they gave me exercises to do, but they were really wanting to tune me up to be a very gifted and talented healer. They wanted to bring out my gifts and help me understand how to use them and how to help people. And a lot of my healing work over the years has been remote, and especially during the pandemic. But even before then, I see some clients face to face, but for the most part, I do it remotely. And they had me do an exercise. I'd already been working on doing healing in a healing pyramid that they created for me in the spiritual plane. But one day they showed up in my meditation, said, come with us. We have a job for you to do. I said, well, okay. And they said, you have to control yourself. You have to control your emotions. You can't laugh. And I said, well, okay, that's an interesting way to introduce me to this. And so they took me, and they, en route, they said, we're taking you to a planet that has a major epidemic going on. And keep in mind, this was around 2005, 2006. And they said, the sentient beings there don't look like you. And you're going to have to be very careful to control yourself when you first see them. And I said, well, okay, how tough can this be? I'm used to Star Trek. And so
Land of the Lost, all those things.
Yeah, so they end up taking my hand, and we end up landing in a great big hospital ward. It just stretched on endlessly, and all these hospital beds. And I look, and the sentient species on that planet looks just like our June bugs. So it's like I'm looking at all these June bugs in hospital beds. And, it came back to mind, of their warning, you can't laugh, Dave. Stifle yourself. And so
how well did you do at that, Dave? Did you do okay with it? Did you laugh or snicker, or what'd you do?
No, I kept that very objective doctor view face, of you just work with the hand you were dealt. And so I talked to some of their leadership and some of their medical professionals, and I started doing energy healing with a lot of them and showed them what I was doing and how to do it, and left them in a much better place with controlling the results of this epidemic they were having. But it was a good lesson for me that I really got to get used to this idea that these beings come in all different shapes and sizes and flavors. And I think one of the big lessons, we see it in a lot of our movies that I think are inspired by different ETs to actually the screenwriters to do them, is the ETs that look like humans aren't necessarily the good guys, and the ETs that look like these horrific monsters that come out of a hole in the ground aren't necessarily the bad guys. Just like if we're walking through an inner city somewhere, we can't make assumptions about people based on their appearance, their dress, their economic level, anything like that about, are they good guys or bad guys? I mean, you have to get to know them. And I even had a dream I woke up out of one time, and it was one of those very real dreams, so I'm sure I was there, where I was in some other place, like a spacecraft, and we were in a break room, and I went into the break room, and seated around the table were like 10 to 12 different beings, and sure enough, it looked like the mix of characters you would see off of a Star Trek or Star Wars, all different shapes and sizes and configurations. And it's just kind of like, well, okay, blow it off. I mean, this is how different people, are made, and just accept it.
Is that like leading into where you want to talk about ETs in plain sight, and how you're going to teach us how to spot them as well? Yeah, or was there a whole lot of stuff in between there?
Well, there's still another story or anecdote I'd like to talk about.
Sure.
And it's one, it's very personal to me, but I think it bears repeating for a lot of people to consider this. So I mentioned I did have an energetic healing pyramid in the spiritual plane, and back in this time period where I was doing all this meditative work, and I was visiting that pyramid a lot to do healings. This was a huge pyramid. I mean, it could hold thousands and thousands of treatment tables, and I would normally find myself going up towards the front of the room. There were maybe half a dozen treatment tables arranged like a horseshoe, and I'd work on specific people there. And so one time I sort of selected who I was going to work on based on my contacts on the phone or emails and things of people who needed help. And so they were energetically represented on these tables, just looking like their human form. And we're surrounded by doctors who've passed and who are there in spirit who could help with their specialties. And we had religious figures such as the Holy Family, and we had Archangel Raphael and other angels and archangels there who were there to help, and just a whole gathering. And I'm starting to work on these people, and I look up, and there were ETs there. And it really shook me. It shook me pretty hard. Recall that I mentioned that I grew up with my dad being an Episcopal priest, and I had a lot of culture from the Episcopal Church, and I didn't realize how deeply that was ingrained in me over the concept. And this might sound funny to some people because we're a lot different now than we were 20 years ago, or especially 40 years ago. And that's the idea that the heaven that we visualize that we're going to go to is a heaven based on this is for humans. And you never really think about it otherwise, but it's kind of like this ingrained thing that God puts you into a body, and the body ages, the body dies. The spiritual component, whether you call it your soul or your higher self or spirit, goes back to a heavenly realm. And there's this assumption that this heavenly realm is for us people, and especially when we have, a Bible that says we're made in the image of God. And, I didn't realize how strongly that was in me. And I had to do a lot of work and a lot of thinking and a lot of meditating on that to get past that idea. And then I really came to welcome the ETs who did show up to help with healing, and also the realization that there are a lot of ETs who are so spiritually advanced that they can incarnate, they can put themselves into a body on an as-needed basis. They can pop out of the body when it's no longer needed for the situation that you're supporting. And they can go to the various vibrational levels in what we think of as our heaven, because our heaven is actually a set of vibrational levels, and some of them are so developed that they have access to those. So it kind of changes your perception on what you think of the heavenly realm into something that has more of a science basis to it, of our consciousness continuing to exist and giving us the opportunity to sort of be co-creators and to generate our reality based on our views in our spiritual plane. So, I wanted to bring that up because it's just ETs are around us. They have a vested interest that we do well for the most part, especially for the what I call the good guy ETs, the ones that are here to help keep us safe, keep us from being attacked, keeping us from destroying ourselves through something stupid like a nuclear explosion again, those types of things. So, I think we are so close to ETs, even if our appearance is different. We're close to them as sentient beings who, whatever your concept of a creator is, or a universal background intelligence, we all participate in that. And I think they're trying to help us move forward in that. We have this problem that our technology and our capabilities are outstripping our moral development and emotional development. And so I think one of their functions is to hang around and try to keep us safe, keep us from doing something really incredibly stupid.
So can I go back to asking you a question about the June bug looking dudes?
Absolutely.
Okay. Not that I didn't listen to the story you just told, but I really got to ask you about the June bugs. Were they like they would walk on two of the legs? They would like be the June bug, but walk on two legs. Would they walk upright?
They were walking upright, but they, as I recall, very much like our June bugs, they had 6 legs, and I think ours have 6 legs, and I don't recall that they flew, but they certainly had that appearance and the face that you would recognize from being a June bug. So
when they fall on their back, they're stuck. Did you have to pull them up every now and then? Because once they're on their back, forget it. They're like stuck.
no, these guys could maneuver that way.
Okay. So when you actually literally helped them heal, what was their sickness, their illness?
They were having a viral attack, and they needed help with the symptoms. And they may have had what I would say is what we recognize as medical techniques, different chemicals, things like that to help. But there were also energy impacts to it, and I was helping them with more of doing an energetic healing about it to balance their systems and to build up their immune system, so to speak, so that they could fight it off and not just succumb.
Did you ever think when you were sitting at Boeing working that, hey, one day I'm going to go heal some June bug people? Would that thought ever have crossed your mind?
My mind? No.
They would have kicked you out if you would have said anything. He's out of here.
I tell people, I can look back. I've been doing this stuff for 40 years now, and 2023 back to 1983, and I can see the path that I followed and the stepping stones. But if you'd shown me that path in 1983 and said, this is what your future looks like and where you'll be in 40 years, I would have run from the room screaming, So there's method to their madness in the spiritual plane on how you're coached and helped to move forward with opportunities to learn and not just dumping it all on you at once. Most people couldn't handle that.
So another question, going back, I have an idea of the answer you're going to give me, but I'm still going to give it a shot. Barry, right? Your buddy's name was Barry?
Yeah.
So Barry does these, he's got these, he says, points his finger basically and says now, and can make things change.
Yes.
In any direction he wants, instant, and as soon as he wants it. He didn't teach you how to do that?
No.
Or did he? Did you ask him? Come here. Get close to the camera and the mic. Smack.
I asked him, I said, how did this start, Barry? And he said, well, originally it happened when I was smoking some grass. And but then he said, I quickly found that I didn't have to be high to have this happen. So somehow it just got activated and turned on. And I said, well, what do you think you're doing? And Barry said something, and it fits with what I've seen in other books, especially about ancient wisdom type of things and people doing stuff. He said, I don't believe that I do it. He said, I think I let it happen. And what I interpret that to be or read into it is that he is changing the quantum probability of an event happening. With something in quantum physics called tunneling theory, right now, Connie, there is a fundamental possibility of you beaming to New York City. Now, that probability has something like 10 zeros in front of it, after the decimal point. So it's very, very unlikely. But there is a finite probability that in the next moment you could just, boop, you're in Times Square. I think Barry was able to change the likelihood of those probabilities where something that is very unlikely suddenly takes on a likelihood. It's very unlikely sitting there with your car idling that the idle is going to slow down and the car is going to stall. Somehow Barry was changing that probability, so that became the dominant probability, and that event would happen. And that's what I read into it. I may be all wrong, but that's the most intelligent assumption I can make about it at this point. And he never came up with any other explanations. He wasn't a technical person, and but it's always funny. He said, "Yeah, I don't do it. I let it happen." And
how do you let it happen, right? How do you let it happen? I want to ask.
I know.
Oh,
we all wish we could kind of let it happen.
This is true. This is true. We're talking to Dave the Mystic, and we're going to learn more. We're going to learn more about ETs in plain sight, too. Dave has gifts in healing, reading the Akashic records, energy and entity clearing, changing core beliefs, karma burning, discerning spiritual gifts, lots more. Stay with us. Connie Willis here on Coast to Coast AM.